won't speak to her anymore, okay? That's another story. Anyway, and as it turns out, Meg has a good friend who actually lives in my building. And when she heard that I was moving into Rue de Saint-Ange, she says, oh, my friend Martine lives in that building too. So we've had this amazing connection. And Meg's going to tell you all about herself, but I will tell you that she is an award-winning American journalist and author based in Paris. She was working for the International Herald Tribune when we met. Oh. As a reporter and editor, she covered international affairs for 30 years with postings in Paris, London, and Moscow. Her previous literary works include a memoir, Desperate to be a Housewife, and it is great, okay? So you don't have any of those with you today, do you? No, okay, but anyway, it's great, okay? Which was published by Mirabelle Books in 2013. And a personal essay, Dear Geneva, which is her daughter, in Family Wanted Stories of Adoption. She's also the author of a culinary blog, The Everyday French Chef. See, this is one of the other hats that Meg wears. She's really a good cook. When Meg said, do you want to come to dinner? I said, yes. So check out her blog, The Everyday French Chef. Okay, and on that note, Meg Bortin.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you so much for hosting this, and thanks to everyone for turning up. I'm grateful. I'm happy to see old friends, old colleagues, and see a lot of new people too, and to see some young people here as well. You got introducing my daughter, Jennifer. So, yeah. So let's see, I didn't prepare a lot of remarks. Adrian sort of summed it up. I'm a career journalist. I've been in Paris for 50 years, 51 years exactly. And I fell into journalism through a stroke of incredible good fortune when I was a young woman in my 20s. And I stuck with it and had a fantastic career. Some of my colleagues from the International Herald Tribune are over here. I won't introduce everybody to everyone because that'll be more. But anyhow, I had a great ride. I worked for Reuters, got two Reuters colleagues here in the room. And I was in Paris as a reporter, and then in London, and then I spent a lot of time in Moscow. And in Moscow, I did 2 tours of dirty, that's a good one. 2 tours of duty. The first one was during the Gorby years, which was absolutely fascinating. A wonderful story, just when glasnost started happening and all that, and the country was opening up. And then I went back there as the editor, the founding editor of a new newspaper called the Moscow Times, which was a daily. This was very challenging. It was the first English language daily in Russia, in the history of Russia. Wow. Adrian's saying, I should speak up. Can you all hear me? You can? I can't believe it. No, we can't have a microphone because of the TV thing, I don't know. And I can't really stand up because I've got a back problem, but I will do my best to project. How's this?
You're doing much better.
I'm better? Okay, good. All right, so then, I left journalism a while back and decided to turn my hand to creative writing. And I've enjoyed every minute of that, except for the part about when you finish writing, you have to get published. And as Adrian said, it's incredibly difficult. I spent 10 years trying to get this book published in various iterations. It improved along the way. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And finally found a very small publisher, an independent house in Wisconsin, which is the state where I grew up. And I'm very grateful to him. It's called, 1016 Press. 1016. So I guess what you want to hear about most is the book, right?
Yeah.
So I'll talk a little bit about the book. Then I'll read a passage because I've been told that people want me to read a passage. And then, you can ask questions, or I can read another passage if you really, really want it. And we'll see, okay? Good. Any questions yet? No? Okay. All right, so the book, it's called The Rights of Man. Obviously, this is a play on words. It's a play on the words, The Rights of Man. Rights. And the reason that this is the case is because one of the main characters, the male protagonist, his name is Tom Paine, like the American Revolutionary. And it's a story, it's a love story that evolves, and usually the usual thing, it starts out great and then things happen. Tom Paine.
We could count on things like that.
Tom Paine, at the beginning of the novel, he has just met a woman named Sherry McManus. And they met, the novel is set in 1996, okay? They met at a 4th of July party in 1996. She's a photographer. He noticed her Pentax, their eyes locked, they met, and she only realized later that he was a famous author. He was a very famous author because his books, his gimmick, Tom Paine's gimmick in the novel, is that he writes contemporary novels under the titles of the original Tom Paine. So his first novel, these people are in their 40s in 96, so his first novel is called Common Sense, right? Like the Tom Paine book, Common Sense, only it's a contemporary novel in his period of contemporary about the Reagan administration and how it's only common sense that Americans should get back to their founding values for the sake of America and the rest of the world. So, even though the book is set in 96, it's sort of relevant today in that sense. And then the same Tom Paine writes a second book which wins the National Book Award called The American Crisis. And it's about the Weathermen and that sort of thing, and stuff that was happening in his youth. Anyhow, I think I've said enough to set the scene here. And I forgot, I was going to tell you a little bit about how I came to write the novel, but I'll save that for later. So, with no further ado, this is a book that's structured in 3 parts plus an epilogue, okay? So, part 1 is called The Game, July 1996, chapter 1. Can you hear me now? Okay. The game began in earnest on July 12, 1996, 8 days after they'd met. The participants, Sherry and Tom, had discussed the idea the night before and had even made a feeble attempt at a first round before being overcome by their mutual attraction and engaging in what most people in a similar situation would do upon finding themselves together in bed. Now, in the pre-dawn half-light, Sherry considered her options. She was quite aware of the risks. Their second morning together, and she already felt the beginnings of a fever that she'd forgotten about, or tried to. She could imagine seeking happiness with Tom. He was kind, witty, and seemed touchingly vulnerable, but, and she'd learned this the hard way, it was far from self-evident that the pursuit of happiness would lead to a happy conclusion. The thump of breakers against the shore rolled into the room. Tom was still sleeping. If she could just ease out of bed without waking him, she could escape back to Manhattan. She held her breath, barely moved, but Tom stirred, blinked, saw her. Sherry. All thought of leaving dissolved at the sound of his voice. Tom, she said, reaching for him. It's probably better when you read it on the page. Just wait. I didn't realize it was going to turn into a farce. Okay. Not yet, he whispered. and she felt the fever mount. He rolled her gently onto her back. Your turn, he said. Her turn. Well, she had 1,000 stories. Get me started, she said. The game was on. Tom pulled aside the sheet. The light was just strong enough to make out the dark tangle of her hair against the pillow, the slope of her cheek, the slight downward turn of her mouth. He wanted to know every curve of her body, every thought in her mind. In the newness of their relationship, He wanted to know everything about her. Then tell me this, he said. You're a beautiful woman. You've clearly been around, but you never settled down. Why not? He'd wondered about it. How could a woman like Sherry McManus have stayed single? At 44, she radiated charm. Half Jewish, half Irish, she told him. The combination was a knockout. I tried, she said. And? It's a long story. We have time, he said. Tell me, who did you try with? She raised an eyebrow. Just how much time do we have? Tom laughed and Sherry had to smile. Only a week and he got her. Thomas G. Paine, prize-winning author and former darling of the chattering classes, the man whose sandy hair and chiseled features had graced the cover of Time. He had some Native American blood, he told her, hence his middle name, Geronimo. Come on, he pressed her. Who? Well, there was the revolutionary. Wait, don't tell me. A Black Panther. No, I know. A Cuban. You met cutting sugarcane with the Venceremos brigades. Yeah, Rick would have loved that, Sherry said. He actually signed up one time, but he was too busy organizing. That sounds very 60s. Early 70s, actually. We were at Berkeley. I know, Tom said. He spotted you across a crowded classroom. No, not really, Sherry said. She sat up in bed. We got gassed together. Tom sat up beside her, settling in against the pillows. His hand drifted onto her thigh. Tell the story, he said, knowing she'd spin it out, taking her time. There was only one rule to their sporting collusion, to pit wit against desire in expectation of a climax. It was an anti-war demonstration, Sherry said. I was really young, 18. The police were out in riot gear. Everyone was shouting, you know, ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh, Viet Cong are gonna win. That sort of thing. Yeah, we had demos like that at Columbia too, Tom said. The leaders chanting ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh and Che Guevara, and everyone getting into it. Well, no one was mentioning Che that day, Sherry said. It was all about Vietnam. Some of the kids were throwing rocks, and it got ugly. I had my Pentax with me and started taking photos. I didn't see the police fall back to charge. There was a bang and a cloud of smoke, then more bangs. Everyone was screaming and running for cover. My eyes were burning. I couldn't see what was happening. Then someone grabbed me. Come on, he said. They'll smash your camera. We ran into the nearest building. It was a dorm. And he led me into the men's room. Tears were streaming down my face. I was actually blinded. He doused my face, then his. I told him I'd caught some great shots. Oops. I told him I'd caught some great shots if the camera wasn't ruined. Fucking pigs, he said. That was pepper gas. Then he stripped to his shorts. I could see by then, so I asked what he thought he was doing. Just give me your camera and get out of your things or you'll cry all day, he said. So I went into a cubicle and stripped to my bra and undies. I was still crying. By the way, he said, I'm Rick. He handed me some paper towels under the door. You can come out, he said. I won't bite. Sherry laced her fingers through Tom's. But he did, she said. Revolutions are sexy. There's not too much to go on this part, so you don't have to worry. Okay. Tom smiled, anticipating the end game. What happened, he asked. Did he seduce you right there on the bathroom floor? No, she said. He got us some clothes from a friend in the dorm and we both went home. But a couple days later, we went to the movies. It was an outdoor cinema on campus. Rick took me to see Breathless. His cover was that Godard was political, but in fact, Rick was in love with Jean Seberg. Especially that scene where she's out on the streets of Paris hawking the New York Herald Tribune.
You worked that in very good.
With her hair cropped short. Yeah. Let's see, I'm having a contact lens. Okay, with her hair cropped short. It was like the 5th time he'd seen the movie, just for that scene. I'd never seen it before, and Belmondo was a revelation. You know, the way he runs his thumb over his lips. Then we went to Rick's. She paused, remembering. Tom brought her thumb to his lips. She felt a rush as their eyes met. Go on, he said. We smoked a joint on the couch. He had a record playing, Season of the Witch by Donovan. He started kissing me. Tom could visualize the scene. Sherry drawing Rick in with her dusky eyes, yielding to the kiss. He fought to control the wild feeling rising inside him. Sounds very sexy, he said. It was, she said. He was my first lover. At 18, you're joking. Sherry slipped down on the bed, pulling Tom with her. Rick refused to believe it, she said, but one thing led to another. We helped each other strip. After all, we'd already done that, but this time it was hot and, well, it was just immense. Tom was kissing her breasts, her neck, moving on top of her. Taking him in her arms, Sherry wrapped herself around him, parting her lips, yielding to his kiss. Okay, that's the first pass.
That was a hell of a first. It's a first, just so you know.
First what?
The first time anyone's read at any of our events anything quite as provocative.
Okay, I should clarify that this is not a romance novel,
No.
and it's not a book about sex. No, absolutely not.
Well, you could have fooled us.
Yeah, the beginning's a little like that, but as you'll see, as the book progresses, it's not about sex, okay? I'm sorry to disappoint you.
You've got to get the readers interested somehow, right?
You'll see this all plays into the story. So, let's see. Is that a question? No, somebody just put their hand up, but no. So, Adrian, what should I do now? Should I read more?
Read another passage or take questions.
I could read a very short passage.
Yeah.
And then I can tell you the backstory of this book, which is kind of interesting too. Nelson, yes?
Meg, could you relate to us what is relevant to today?
I can, but if you want, okay, how many want a new passage and how many want to go straight to questions? I don't care one way or the other. The other passage, I timed it, it's like 2 minutes.
Well, then let's do it. Let's
Do
do
it?
questions. Yeah.
Okay, so, you've got the opening scene. Tom and Sherry are in bed. We just went through that. They start telling stories. It's a game they play for sex purposes. And then after that, what happens? I'm going to skip ahead a little to further into the chapter, the same chapter. They go for a walk on the beach, and they talk about things like, to answer your question, Nelson, Sherry is 44 in 1996, right? So that means she was, let's do the math on that.
74 now.
She's 70.
Yeah, no, not
unfortunately,
now.
yeah.
Then, I'm thinking, she was in Berkeley in like 1970, something like that. It was at the start of the women's movement, and it was when all this political activity is going on. And now they're in 96, and they're talking about, like, what happened to the revolution and all these ideas, and everyone's turned out to be a banker or a hedge fund owner or something, that sort of thing.
Clinton was in office at the time, right?
In 96, I think he hadn't been elected yet in July. I think he was, maybe he
No, I
was.
think he was.
No, he was.
Okay, you're right. Don't ask me tough questions because I woke up at 5:30 in the morning today. Anyhow, I could read that passage, but I was planning to read a different one, Anyhow, they take a walk on the beach. They get to know each other. We find out a bit more about both of these characters. And then we know that they're out on the beach. He said they end up there at Tom's beach house on Long Island. What we find out is that Tom also has a wife, but they've been estranged for a year. They're separated, okay? And he has to go into town occasionally for what he calls keeping up appearances, right? Because he's a famous author, they haven't made it public that they're separated, etc. So Sherry finds out about this. She decides she's not, they meet at a party. She doesn't realize who he is. He gives her his card. She says, oh my God, he's this famous author, and he's married, so he wants her to come back. She says no, but then they talk on the phone and whatnot, and when he says the marriage is over, you know, so she goes on out there and they start this affair. So in the chapter we're in now, it's, and I'll come back to your question if you want, Nelson. Okay, Sherry's about to go back to Manhattan. Okay? And the thing I didn't mention about Tom Paine is, you know, he wrote these 2 books, but for the last 7 years he's had writer's block. He hasn't been able to write a word. And this is what was partly behind the breakup of his marriage, that he wasn't a success anymore, anyhow. So I'll just read this other passage. The sun was high now and families were arriving at the beach. Tom checked his watch. They'd have to hurry to make Sherry's train back to Manhattan. We'd better get going, he said. With the weekend looming, they said little on the drive to the station. It was Friday, and Tom would be joining his wife in the city on Saturday for a visit he described as keeping up appearances. He kissed Sherry goodbye on the platform and waved as her train disappeared. Back at the beach house, Tom felt distracted. He put some coffee on, hoping to clear his head. There was something out there, if only he could grasp it. But every time he tried to zero in on whatever it was, the image of Sherry rose up. He missed her already. What was it she'd said about making love for the first time? That it was colossal? No, she'd said it was just immense. The sound of coffee percolating brought him back to the present. He poured himself a mug and went out on the deck. Don't think, he told himself, gazing out across the dune. That was how ideas used to come to him before writer's block derailed his life. It was always when he wasn't thinking about anything in particular, while he was under the shower or jogging in Washington Square. Let it happen again, he thought, willing his muse to return. For the first time in too long to contemplate, he could feel her presence, as if floating on the breeze caressing the deck. Tom went back inside. Taking the stairs 2 at a time, he went up to his study. There it sat, his Olympia portable. He approached it warily, friend or foe. He rummaged in his desk, found a ream of paper, grabbed the typewriter, and took it all out to the deck. Beads of sweat purled on his forehead. On the picnic table, everything stood ready. The typewriter, the paper. All he needed to do was sit. Gulls swooped overhead, their cries seeming to mock him. Do it! Do it! Ha 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 ha! Wild feeling rising, Tom straddled the bench. Could he do it? He drew a page from the ream and rolled it in.
Great performance.
Anyhow, to get back to Nelson's question, you know, it was like, I actually started writing the book in 1996, but it wasn't a book then. I thought I was going to write it as a screenplay. And, you know, all these topics were much on my mind because I too was part of, you know, the women's movement, and I'd seen what had evolved and how things had changed and the progress and the negative progress and all that. So this book allowed me to air some of those concepts, and it's there's a lot in it about, but just mold it in, nothing hard-hitting, about American founding values and democracy and, you know, truth versus fiction and false news and all that sort of thing. So in that sense, I think it is relevant to today, lies and whatnot. Anything else? Yes, Diane.
Can you tell us a bit about the backstory of the book?
Yeah,
What gave
sure.
you the idea?
I'm glad you asked that question because it's a good story. So I don't know how many of you actually live in Paris and how many are from elsewhere. So for those in Paris, some of this is
You want to see hands?
not necessarily, unless people want to.
I don't know, a
Paris.
lot.
Live in Paris.
Live in Paris. Okay, live in Paris. Okay. Those who live in Paris have probably heard of the writer Marguerite Duras.
Yeah.
And even those who don't. So, Marguerite Duras. Why am I talking about Marguerite Duras? When I was a student at Cornell, I wrote my master's thesis about Marguerite Duras. I'd stumbled across, I had been living in Paris. I stumbled across a book of hers at a left bank bookshop called Les Parleuses. It's a dialogue with another writer whose name is Xavier Gauthier. And I just found this book absolutely fascinating. So I left Cornell, I went back to finish my master's and decided to write it about Marguerite Duras. So I spent a year, more than a year, maybe a year and a half, immersed in the work of Marguerite Duras. And by the time I was done with that, I was so sick of Marguerite Duras, I couldn't spit it. I didn't know anything more about Marguerite Duras. So then I moved to Paris, and I became a journalist after that, and could have looked her up and tried to interview her or something like that. But I didn't really want to go near her. I followed what she was doing, did theater, she did movies, everything. She was the person who wrote the script for Hiroshima Mon Amour, which is a great film, by the way, in addition to her many books. Anyhow, one time in Paris, I was already living in my place over here on Boulevard Beaumarchais, so it was after 91. Must have been around 95, something like that. I'm at home minding my own business, and this friend of mine calls up and said, listen, I'm gonna go get pizza with some people, Turkish pizza on the Rue Aubercamp, if you wanna come? And I say, sure. Okay, and I get there, and they're sitting at the table. I'm introduced to Uta, who is the son of Marguerite Duras. So I just, for me, this was an amazing thing. I never expected to meet the son. I knew all about him because I'd read her history and everything. So we have a very nice dinner, and, I was just sort of, overwhelmed. Yeah. And fine. So, okay. Maybe a week or two later, the same friend calls up and says, well, listen, Uta has invited us to a party at Neaufles-le-Château, which is the home of Marguerite Duras. She had since died, but he was living there. You want to come? And I say, yeah, sure.
Are you kidding?
So we go to Montparnasse and get on a little train, and out we go to Neaufles-le-Château, and this party is in full swing. And again, I was just overwhelmed to be in the home of this woman to whom I devoted so much thought. And there were her photos, there was her music, our kitchen, everything was the same as she'd left it. It was just so charming, and a beautiful garden. And, so the party's going on, and Uta's playing records on a, normal turntable, which I also still have, so I found that charming as well. And after a while, this one guy started asking me to dance. So, okay, I danced with him. I felt like, I looked pretty decrepit, but and he was persistent, so I danced with him. And it turned out he was an Italian guy named Maurizio, right? And Maurizio was living there working as the gardener and housekeeper for Marguerite Duras' son. So when the party was over, he asked me for my number, and a few days later he called me and said, you want to come back out? And I said, well, yeah. So I got back on the little train by myself this time and went out after work at the IHT. I took my little suitcase with me to the IHT that day. And, we had a nice evening,
What's your suitcase for?
Well, I had my toothbrush, whatever. Anyhow, he turned out to be an excellent Italian chef. He made the spaghetti for me, and we sat around at Marguerite Duras' table, and he asked me a lot of questions about my life, and he was very curious about me because I was a journalist, and he wanted to become a writer, and he asked me a lot of questions about writing, this sort of thing, and I told him stories, and he told me stories. We exchanged about stories. Anyhow, this went on a few times, maybe 4 or 5 times over a few weeks. And then one day I turned up there, and in the same scenario, we're sitting at Marguerite Duras' kitchen table, schmoozing and whatnot, and he says, oh, I've got news for you. I said, well, what's that? He said, I wrote a story. Can I read it to you? And I said, sure. And that's all I'm going to tell you. I don't want to give away the plot of my book. Anyhow, yeah. So that's how Marguerite Duras. I have Marguerite, in fact, I thanked Marguerite Duras posthumously in the acknowledgements, because without this
Okay, so wait a
experience.
minute, is that the answer to the question of what inspired you to write
Yes,
this
it is,
book?
it is. This whole story is what led to me writing the book. And like I said, I originally thought I was gonna write it as a screenplay. I was still a working journalist when I started on this. And then things happened, I had to put it aside because of various complications. And then much later, when I'd already left the paper, I decided to go back to this and write it as a novel instead. And yeah.
I'm always curious about the titles of books.
Uh-huh.
Tell me how you came about this title.
Well, it was pretty easy because, you know, Tom Paine, the chief male character, is a writer, and he uses the titles of the other Tom Paine for his books. And the other Tom Paine did write a book called The Rights of Man, Rights. So, you know, this is a play on words on that title, okay? It's, you know, because as I said, where they're talking about, you know, male-female relations and all that, and so the rights of man. Does that make sense? It becomes clear in the telling of the story, but I just don't want to give too much away. Wait, there was somebody back there.
Well, I was gonna ask the same question, you know, the rights of man, but now you kinda answered it. It all comes together after you read the book and you'll know the rights of man.
Yeah. Did you read the book?
No.
Okay, no, 'cause I'm gonna ask
Not
those
yet.
people in the audience who may have read the book, please don't give any spoilers for the book.
That's
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right.
That's it.
Yeah, yes.
I just want to congratulate you on sticking to your gumption for finishing the book.
Thank you. Thanks.
That's number one. Two, the last time I saw you was 10 years ago. She taught me at a Weiss class in 2015. Yes, it's me.
Hi. Oh, good to see you.
And she was teaching memoir class, and I loved her, and fortunately, she really liked me because of you, I think. I have now had a book published, which I sent
Well
to you,
done.
and never followed up on talking together
Oh.
about it. When we do that, I had to go back to the United States. So, one, I want to thank you for, you really were the kick.
Well, thank you.
And telling me I was a good writer. I had a lot to learn, but you didn't tell me that. And the stick-to-itiveness, it's always a question when something goes in the drawer and I think I can't look at this thing one more time, which I'm sure you did a number of times.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how long it takes, does it?
Well, you know, I was absolutely thrilled when this got published. I can't believe it happened. You know, I had a lot of help from my friends in terms of the stick-to-itiveness, and my daughter, who encouraged me every step of the way to keep going on this. Yeah, thanks, Jennifer. And I also had an incredible stroke of luck late in the day because, you know, I tried to get an agent. The book had a different title originally. I've skipped with that, and I'm not going to tell you that. Anyhow, I got an agent. She sat on it for a year, never showed it to a single publisher. So then I fired her. Then I couldn't get another agent, and I tried approaching some Anyhow, what happened, to make a long story even longer, about a year and a half ago, I received the University of Wisconsin alumni newsletter because I did my undergraduate work at the University of Wisconsin. And they just send all this stuff. Sometimes I read it, sometimes I just trash it. This one day I read it and I saw a little item. UW alumni, a youngish guy, had taken over this publishing house in Wisconsin. So I thought, well, you never know. So I wrote him this letter saying sort of as one alumni to another, how about it? And he said, well, send us your manuscript and we'll let you know in 3 months. And 3 months came and went and he took me. So I'm incredibly grateful to him. A good guy named Michael Brown. And I'm actually going to go on a book tour in the States, which is another miracle. And I'll meet him for the very first time when I'm going to go to Milwaukee. He's young. I don't know how young. I'm afraid to ask. I can tell you he's got an intern. Wait, he has an intern whose name is Dakota with an H at the end. And she's his marketing intern. So I'm hopeless, I mean, I'm not completely hopeless because here you are, but I'm pretty bad at promotion marketing. I don't like that part of the thing. Anyhow, so we set up a phone call so she could give me some pointers. And, now why was I telling this story? Yeah, well, this is why. You know, I mean, her main plan for me was to go on Instagram and post videos. They call them reels. I think the younger generation knows all about this, but I'm not good at it. And she wanted me to post reels once a week in the run-up to the book, and then twice a week. And I said, like, what am I supposed to talk about? You know, I said, first of all, I'm camera shy, hello. And second of all, you know, what am I saying? She said, well, just talk about what you're making for dinner or what you do during the day. I just thought, you know, forget about that. That's just not me. I said to her at one point in the conversation, I said, you know, but she was very smart and very, you know, she was very together. And I said, by the way, Dakota, you're still a student at the University of Wisconsin? She says, yes, I am. I said, well, do you mind if I ask how old you are? I'm 20. And that's the way it is these days in publishing, you know? And I was really lucky to have her. So.
But you could talk about what you were making for dinner, because it's one of the really great hats you wear.
I could have gone on Instagram ages ago to do cooking things, but I just can't cope. I can't do it too much. Anyhow, yes.
Hi, Meg.
Hi.
Hi. I was going to
Oh,
ask you.
God, hi. I can
I'm
see you.
so sorry I was late.
No, thank you for coming on.
Pleasure, and congratulations.
Thank you.
I was going to ask you about your cooking blog too, but since we've already sort of skipped over that, I'm going to ask you about your process, because I'm always interested in knowing about how someone who has a long career in journalism like yourself goes from that to fiction, and how you actually sit down and do it. And you've done it twice.
Yeah.
You got a memoir, it's not fiction.
She stole my question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We talked
So,
about
so I'm just, how do you do it? Just give us an idea of how you do it.
You know, what started me off was, I don't know if you remember, because we were colleagues at the International Herald Tribune for many years. After the Moscow Times, which was 92 to 94, I took a year off work, self-financed, because I just wanted to have a break. And during that time, I did a writing workshop at the British Institute over by Invalides. And it was an excellent workshop run by Alice Notley and
Doug Oliver.
Doug Oliver, who has since died. They were wonderful. He was British, she was American, and it was just a wonderful workshop. And one time, they gave us an assignment, like, write something that's just one sentence, you know? And I wrote a poem. And I'm not, you know, I'm not a poetry person so much, so, you know, I'm not gifted in that department. I wrote a poem about visiting the Chernobyl nuclear facility a year after the explosion and fire and radiation disaster in Ukraine, because I'd gone on a press trip down there. And the thing I discovered was I could say so much in this short poem that was only one sentence long that never made it into the newspapers, because you didn't have the feeling. You get the facts, but not the feeling. And there's a scene in this book that talks about that, and it has to do with that really well-known photo by the AP photographer of the girl running through a Vietnamese village with napalm and whatnot. And it's how, you know, you can talk about what happened in a newspaper article, but you're never going to convey as much as that photo does, and the mother's grief and all this stuff. You know, so I discovered with that poem that really there was a lot that could be done in creative writing that couldn't be covered in journalism. So ever since that workshop, I started working on literary projects. Many of them have gone nowhere. I happen to have 2 more books in my computer. I don't know if they'll go anywhere. They're not fiction. I wrote one film scenario about, you know, it was about the breakup of the Soviet Union and what happened to the Soviet Communist Party money. That was a book I tried to write, and I did get an agent briefly, and she couldn't sell it because David Remnick's Lenin's Tomb had just come out. But I actually did some investigating into this, what happened to the Soviet Communist Party money when the party collapsed in '91. And since I couldn't, then another thing that happened was a Russian guy who was working on exactly the same subject got blown up in his car in Moscow. So I just decided, okay, move on, boys, move on. Yeah, and then I'd do something else, but I had this material, and it was fantastic material, so I thought, okay, I'm gonna write a screenplay. So then I took a screenwriting course. This was all while I was still working. It was before Jenna became around. I had a bit more time. And so I set it up as a screenplay, wrote it, tried to get an agent, and my friend's son is in Hollywood. I tried to get him interested, anyhow. Nobody was buying this movie, So that one it's downstairs in my cellar right now. Nothing ever happened with that. And in terms of this story, I saw it, many people have read the book. First of all, I'll just encourage you, they say it's a page turner, but it's very cinematic. It's very cinematic, and I think the reason is because I did first envisage it as a movie, and then when I left the paper, and after I published my memoir, I went back to this thing. I set it up, I did my outline. It's a carefully plotted book, as you'll see. And I set the outline up sort of interior day, exterior night, and did the scenes, and said what was gonna happen in the scenes, sometimes even put the dialogue in there before actually writing the book. And that made it easier, for me to, it's tricky what you're saying about making the conversion from journalism. Well, memoir is a stepping stone because you're still based in fact, so that's easier. Letting go of fact completely to be a fiction writer, it's not that easy for a journalist. For example, when I first wrote the book, I put the date. There were no chapters. My excellent publisher told me to make chapters. I just had the date at the top of each section, which exact date in July, October, and December 1996, which day, whether it was morning or night. And then, at some point along the line, I realized that was really cumbersome and there were other ways to weave in so readers wouldn't get lost. But that was the journalist side of me, wanted to spell everything out. And yeah, does that answer the question?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah, I don't know. Are you thinking of going into creative writing?
Oh, always. But it's a matter of getting started. And what you said about memoir being a stepping stone, that's interesting, because it's still fact-based, although you can still involve it.
Yeah, in my memoir, everything was absolutely true. I just changed the names of everyone, including myself, as I put it, to protect the guilty. It was not a, as we discussed in the memoir workshop, it's not a memoir is different from an autobiography. It's a slice of life, so you can, just choose a very small amount of life if you want to do it. And it's also not about you, yeah?
Quick follow-up though, do you write every day? Do you?
Not anymore. Right now I'm way too busy trying to get this thing so it doesn't sink like a stone and comes out, but when I'm working on a project, I do tend to write every day. Sometimes I take a break on Sundays to go to the market, but I tend to write in the morning. I get up, have coffee, and then sit down at the computer. And what I find is that it doesn't matter even if I'm only going to write for an hour. I need to know that I've got 2 to 3 hours empty to have that space, that mental space, where I don't feel pressured. And then I write for as long as I want to or can, and then the next day I reread and go on, and sometimes I go back and forth. For me, I know people who only write at night after dinner. This I could never do, I could never do, because I like to have a lot of wine at dinner, and, might help actually, but, I wouldn't mind a glass of wine right now. Yes, Margot?
I have just one question. Based to your second reading, the question is, does good sex lead to unblocking writer's block?
Too busy having sex.
I wouldn't know.
Maybe not.
It seemed like a solution.
Yeah, well,
Well, it worked for Tom Paine, didn't it?
Tom Paine,
Well, we don't know.
something.
Because she stopped reading.
Yeah, you'll find out. Okay, anything else?
So I have a question.
Yes.
How is it that you even began this idea with Tom Paine
Tom Paine?
as the character? and the
You
relationship.
really wanna know?
Yeah,
You
I
wanna
really
know?
wanna
I'm gonna
know.
tell, I never told anyone this story.
Oh, well, that's good.
Okay, Tom Paine, I was thinking I had a male character. I wasn't about to name him Maurizio, right? So I thought, well, what is it about this guy? I thought, well, he's really a pain. Okay, Tom Paine. Then I had to look on the internet to see if there was a real author named Tom Paine who had written any books like the books that my guy was going to write. And I found that there was another author named Tom Paine, but it wasn't the same sort of person, and I just figured I could take it. And besides, the other real life author named Tom Paine was not, his middle name was not Geronimo. I got Geronimo, that part Apache element plays a role in the book later on. Everything I read, everything, I was planting the seeds, and they all sprout later on down in the book.
So that ended up inspiring you? Just saying he's a real pain?
I love
And that
thinking
became
listen, I love
inspiration.
thinking up names. I love thinking up names. There's a lot of wordplay in this book, starting with the title, and I love thinking up names. For example, Sherry McManus, that's the name of the female protagonist. Why? Well, there are various reasons why Sherry, among other things, in French, Sherry is chérie, which means my love, my darling, etc. Okay, but there's another reason for Sherry that I won't go into right now. And why McManus? I like McManus because, Mac is like the son of, and then you've got man, and then you've got us. And so it seemed like an all-encompassing kind of name, Sherry McManus. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with the names, really a lot. There's Jessica, Tom's wife, Jessica Franklin, and she has a poodle. It's in the first chapter or second chapter, so I'm not giving too much away. She has a poodle named Che, who looks just like her with curly hair with a white streak, and he wears a bandana around his neck. I mean, this is a whole era thing. Yeah. Yes? I thought you put your hand up. No. Somebody put their hand up?
I have a question. How
Yeah.
many languages do you speak? You said you.
I speak quite a few.
Yeah.
I picked them up. Like I speak French, obviously, and I speak Italian.
Do you speak Russian?
Yeah, I speak Russian pretty well. My Russian and Italian were at the same level, but I made friends with a Ukrainian woman here, partly thanks to Margot, who just went back to Kiev in September, and she didn't speak French or English, so my Russian improved a whole lot by talking with her.
Wow.
It got rusty. And I speak some Spanish, and let's see what else. I can understand German, more or less, sort of, a bit. I can function. Yeah. And
That's a gift.
it is a gift. It is a gift. I'm lucky. I had different languages as a young woman, and
That's really hard.
I love it because I can go somewhere, and even if I don't speak the language, there are enough. Like if I go to Serbia, I don't speak Serbo-Croatian. Well, if I hear people speaking Czech, I can pick up a tiny bit of Czech, not everything. But it's good to feel connected.
Have you ever tried to write in another language?
I've written in French. I would never attempt to write in another language other than French. I got an advanced degree in French, and I can do it, but it's not perfect. It's like.
And God forbid, in
Yeah.
French, if it's not perfect.
It can be clumsy. I appeal to friends when I have to write something in French. I mean, I can write a letter in French, of course, but I wouldn't try to write anything literary in French. What?
And I said it would be hard. Thank God for Deep L is all I have to say.
For which?
Deep L.
I
Deep
agree.
L.
That's the best one.
I don't know that.
It's a translation program.
What's it called?
Deep L, D-E-P-L. Deep L.
Never heard of it.
Oh my God, changed my life.
Lingway or Google Translate is pretty good.
No, Deep L is 10 times better.
Yeah?
Meg, did you laugh out loud when you were working at times?
Did I laugh out loud, she asked.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I cried.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the book gets very moving at certain points. At least for me it was. And when I hit that point, even sometimes, I don't know if like Doreen, who's a very accomplished journalist, if this ever happens to you. But sometimes when I finish a story, a journalistic story, and I write the last line, and sometimes I just get that thing where tears come up. Because it's moving. For me, it's moving, or whatever. I don't know. Does that ever happen to you?
Just did that a week ago on a revised manuscript that I turned into the publisher, and it was more like, holy shit, Tom.
Oh,
Yeah,
tears of joy.
It was relief.
Yeah.
It was relief.
And another question,
Yeah.
and somebody referred to.
Wait, I'm going to repeat your question because you're very soft-spoken. This is Bernadette.
No, thank you
also
for
a colleague
doing that,
from the
because
Herald.
because
Yeah.
your microphone can't hear her.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
The second question.
The second question.
You mentioned, or somebody mentioned it, contemporary events motivate you when you're writing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Contemporary events motivate me when I'm writing? Yes, of course. I've always been sort of politically minded, interested in politics. I grew up in the Vietnam era, as you know. I mean, Sherry McManus is not that far off my age. She's a little younger than me. In other words, she was born a couple years after I was, but we're in the same bracket. And I think most people who were in university in the United States at that time were just marked for life by the events, you know. And of course these days I hate to turn on the TV or open the paper because there's one jaw-dropping story after another. I don't want to offend anybody here, but you know.
You can't offend anyone in this room, is my guess.
Yeah. Anyhow, yeah, I'm still political. I still think about it every day and try not to think about it every day these days. You know, and not just the States. I mean, the war in Ukraine, it's just, the news is so appallingly awful right now. But I do feel that, you know, one of the things that our president is doing that I object to most profoundly is trampling on American founding values, which I believe in deeply. And I feel like when the Vietnam War happened, it sort of exposed this rift. This is all sort of in there. You know, because we had always been taught that America was on the side of the angels, and then we discovered what's happening over there. And it was, again, a sort of, you know, moral breach in the founding values and what do we stand for and what do we believe in. And I feel that these things are really important. I don't know if the United States will ever recover from what's happening right now. Yes, David.
Following on from that a little, and the distinction between fiction and non-fiction, you started with a memoir in which you disguised yourself, which could be called perhaps creative non-fiction or faction or autofiction. You've moved on to this, and as we've just found out, we've worked out probably, Ms. McManus is roughly your age.
She's my age, but she's not me. She's not anything like me, but she is my age.
But you also indicated that there was an Italian lover in there who inspired Tom Paine. You did?
Well, not in the book.
No, she didn't.
Okay,
No.
I miss her.
No.
So this is not creative non-fiction or
Absolutely
disguised
not.
anything?
Absolutely
No.
not. This is, you know, Sherry McManus is my age, and I did know men who were Tom's age because they were my contemporaries. But these are both fictional people. They really don't. Her character is not the same as my character. You know, she doesn't look like me. She doesn't act like me. You know, whatever. And in terms of my memoir, no, it was not creative nonfiction. It was a memoir. The only thing I changed was everyone's name. You know, I could have written X, Y, Z or A, B, C. It didn't matter. I didn't want to identify people. And I changed my name. Here's another thing when I play with words. I changed my name in the book. The character's name was Mona Venture, which in French becomes Mon Aventure, which means my adventure.
Secondly, if I may, the rights of man, let's talk about the RIGA, the rights, the RITES, that's on the cover.
Yeah.
With your relatively long life and experience, and through writing that book, is the rights of man, is that a description of the sort of dance between male and female relationships or loving relationships, or do we have to buy the book and find out?
You've got to buy the book and find out. No, basically, you know, as I try and explain to French friends who are puzzled by this title, you know, it's hard because it's, you know, a play on words. I say, you know, rights is like droit, like your rights, like human rights. And that's rights with a GHT. And this sort of rites is more like rituals. So you can call it the rites of man, men's rituals, the mating dance, whatever you want to call it. And you'll see when you read the book. I know David will read the book because he came all the way from Geneva today. And if he thinks he's going to get out of here without that, all right, anything else?
Now, I haven't gotten far enough in the book yet, but I hear that there's a twist.
Oh, Adrian, we're not going to talk about that, as I said.
Well, yeah, well, I know you're not going to divulge.
Yes.
But I'm dying to get to this point.
Well, just carry on.
So can the rest of us get into the book?
You
Well,
buy it and read it.
Should we end at the question and answers
Well, I don't know.
now?
Are there more questions?
Are there more questions?
We have plenty of time. It's 10 after 4.
Well,
So we can go as long as you're willing.
I have a question.
Okay.
Is there any way for me to get a glass of wine here, do you think?
can
Is
get
she
it.
gonna come back up?
I'll go get
Oh, you'll go get it. Okay, thanks, Dawn. Rouge, s'il te plaît. Un verre de Bordeaux rouge.
Here, have a tick.
Oh, no. Jennifer's gonna be sure. Yeah, I'm sure. They can probably escape now is the thing.
Could you read us another choice piece?
Yeah.
You want more?
Yes.
What?
Well, I just had a question. It's
Yes.
more a logistical question. You talked about, the difficulties of finding a publisher and now doing the promotion.
She's asking about the difficulties of finding a publisher and doing the promotion.
And so what are you doing to promote it? Are you being inventive? What do you do?
I'm doing my best, but I'm 76.
This won't hurt.
I've done my best. So I created a mailing list which had 350 people on it and all across the world that I know who I knew would be interested, and I wrote the book. And I publicized it on Facebook, and I've publicized it through various newsletters. I'm trying to get the same University of Wisconsin alumni newsletter to write about me hooking up with the publisher since they already wrote about him. And that newsletter goes to tens of thousands of people, so that would be good. I mean, the challenge is to break out of my immediate circle, get the book out. So I managed to get a book tour set up, and I think that might create some publicity. I'm going to be reading at Politics and Prose in Washington.
Very great. Very good.
It's really great. And then this bookshop in Milwaukee, this very good bookshop called called Boswell. And then in Berkeley at Pegasus Books. And the fact that I was even able to do this is just amazing.
There you go.
Yeah. So, but I don't have what Doreen has had in the past, having a major agent, a major publisher, a major media machine behind her. I don't have that. And I've got things on I wrote up a promotion calendar of things I wanted to do, this being one of them. And let's give a big round of applause to Adrian.
You are not on NetGalley, and I found, I don't know if you can do it or you need somebody to do it for you, but people read it for free and then they write reviews and put it on Amazon and Goodreads, and it's like $300 and it's really worth it.
Okay, I don't know about NetGalley. We should talk
I
about that
have your
afterwards.
email address and I will write you.
Thank you. So much. Anyhow, yeah, I don't know, Doreen, does that answer your question? I mean, I'm doing my best.
It's difficult.
I'm asking, when I wrote to the 350 people, some of whom are in this room today, I asked them to please share the message. I mean, you can see how it can be logarithmic if people actually share and people get interested. But without a review, it's hard. And like the New York Times, they don't review books from, Podunk Springs publishers and whatnot. To get into the New York Times, which is the only real newspaper that does major book reviews these days in the States, it takes more of a miracle than I've been able to produce so far.
But even the big publishers do not really work hard for their authors at all.
I know that seems to be the case
Nor do
these
the
days.
publicity people you pay $1 gazillion.
Yeah.
Is it an ebook as well?
Yeah, it does come as an ebook. I mean, the cost of the book online is more than 15 euros. That's a lower price. The cost of and it depends. It's bizarre also because it sells at different prices at different Amazon sites, and I can do nothing about it because it's all my publisher is in control. And I also have no idea about the sales of the book because my publisher has told me that he was reliant on the distributor, which is Ingram, the major distributor, but that he won't know for 3 to 4 months after publication of the book. And I find this really incredibly frustrating. When I published my memoir, it was self-published, and I knew every day how many books were selling. But we shall see. We shall see.
Have you thought about doing an audiobook?
Not yet.
Because if you do the read, it'll be great.
Yeah, and the reading here today turned out pretty good. I mean, I can't believe the audience response. It was fun.
No, but it's always best when the author does their own read, as long as the author can do a good job. And from what I heard today, your read would be great.
Thank you, Adrian. It's something to think about. I'm not there yet, but little by little. I don't have a presence in England yet, which I'd really like to set up. But everyone can't do everything. It takes a lot of time to do each of these little things. It takes just a huge amount of time, and I'm getting tired.
Our age is working against us.
Have you approached the American Library?
I did. Of course I did. I got in touch with them early on. And the person in charge, who's someone I actually know from journalism, not very well, just said no. Said no to having me come for a reading, she hasn't read the book. I actually did not send them a copy of the book, and I should take one over there. But she just said no. I don't fit in with their programming, which is fair enough, but the American Library used to be very community-oriented in the sense of supporting local Parisian English language writers, and she's taken it to a different place. It's much more sophisticated. Do you agree?
I agree.
Much more sophisticated. It's changed a lot, and I don't fit in with their programming, and so there you go. I also tried a number of bookshops, and they did not get anywhere.
What about Shakespeare?
No, they turned me down right away.
Why?
Well, by the time I wrote to them, they said they already, they'd like to do books when they first come out, that their schedule was full, and they've got really a lot of books and whatnot. I mean, it also changed, But anyhow, I'm happy. The book, I should tell you, for those of you who live here, it's on sale at the Red Wheelbarrow bookshop near, opposite the Luxembourg Gardens, and I'm very grateful for that. If you
Are you
want
gonna
to
do
buy,
something there?
not yet, but she did read the book and told me she loved it. So maybe something.
Is it more helpful to buy it from them than it is to buy it here?
Well,
Or does it matter?
if you think you're going to buy it and you want to buy it there, if you live nearby or something, that would be great because I want to enjoy it and keep it.
But she's gonna sign it for you.
No, I know. I'm just thinking in terms of
Now he
sales
has to up the
and
price
publicity.
also, so.
Yeah, it's gonna be more
Now he has to
expensive.
up the price.
It would be, I don't know how much she's selling it for. That's up to her. But for me, it's very good if people go to the bookshop and buy the book because I want to keep stocking it.
Right.
Books.
That's what I was asking.
Yeah. So, thanks. So should we move on and I'll sign the books if anyone wants to buy it and if you've got more questions.
That's 20 euros.
Okay, well, wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Is that the end of the questions?
I don't know. I'm happy to continue, but I think people run out of questions.
Anyone have any more questions? Okay, wait, comments and a question
My
before we
hearing
end.
is not as good as it used to be, so probably you've already answered this in bits and pieces, but could you announce who is the publisher, who is doing any publicity for you, where can we read about it, where can we buy it? Just do
Okay.
that again.
I will.
I realize, yes, we can do that here, but I also would like to go and insist with Penelope that you get a reading, so.
Oh, thank you. Okay, well, look, here's about the book. Everything about the book is on my author website, which is megbortin.com. Megbortin, all one word, .com. You got everything about the book. There's a list of my events, and there's more about the story than what I told you here. There's some background about me, and there's some of the other stuff I do besides the book. So it's megbortin.com. And in terms of my publisher, it's called 1016 Press, 1016, right? And my publisher, the young man, whose age I'm afraid to ask, his name is Michael Brown, Braun. He's been incredible, incredibly supportive.
Based where?
Based in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. It's part of Milwaukee.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, he has an editor there who I was very nervous about getting edited because heck, I'm an editor. So I'm thinking, do I my book, you know, that. And then, you know, her name was Katie Ramos, and I'm saying, oh, you know, if Michael's 35, how old can she be? And I really feared the worst. She actually did a wonderful job. You know, she helped me a lot. She improved the book by taking out a lot of the he said, she said. But she also left comments in the margin, and I learned some things. For example, Sherry has a partner. Sherry is a photographer of musicians in concert. And she shoots these concerts with another guy who does the same thing. His name is Granville Max, and he's black, from Oakland, and he's living in Manhattan now, and he's gay, and he's taking pictures. So at one point I wanted to describe him. So, you know, you don't want to just say every character, he looked like this, she looked like that, so what? So Sherry's a photographer, she's got a whole wall in her living room that's full of photos of the musicians she's taken in concert, you know, and of her friends and some of herself. So there's this photo up there of Granville, and when Tom comes over for the first time, he's trying to figure out who's who. He says, oh, this must be Granville. And I say, he pointed to a photo of a guy in dreadlocks, right? Okay, well, Katie Ramos, bless her, told me that you can no longer say dreadlocks in the States. It's politically incorrect. You know? I didn't realize that. Yeah.
What do you say?
Well, I ended up changing the hairstyle. I think I said, yeah. I mean, I asked lots and lots of people about this because, like, my brother lives in Oakland, and I said, wait, is it not cool to say dreadlocks? I don't know. I went and I asked some black friends, and they said there was no problem with dreadlocks. But I just didn't want to raise it. I didn't want to. If I could solve the problem and make sure nobody got offended, I just thought I'd change the hairstyle. Yeah, I couldn't think how else to express dreadlocks. And I said, "What is the problem with dreadlocks?" You know, and she said there was some feeling in the black community because there's the word dread in it that it had racist roots.
So
You
it's
should
one
have
of those
written
things
dreadlocks.
black people could say, but white people can't.
Would have got so much publicity. You'd have sold lots of books so people could have been offended.
I had the same problem as you had.
Yeah,
Yes, and it was the memoir of the village voice. And in one of the chapters, I have Toni Morrison, who was at the village voice.
Toni Morrison.
Toni Morrison. And so Toni Morrison, I describe her before giving her own words, and I describe her with the beautiful mane of her hair. And it was immediately rejected. While for another writer, I also used mane because she had really that young. And it was not taken out because she was white. And I had several little things like that, throughout the book. And it was ridiculous for me, and I fought for it, I really fought for it. Nothing to do. They could not understand the way we see things, And it was like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. So it's, I see that even now, they are still on that level, and so that it will disappear, with what's happening. You listen better, but what's happening. But in fact, I see that you had the same experiences.
I didn't fight it because I feel like I've been out of the States for 50 years, and mentalities change, and I'm not into politically correct or not correct. I'm happy to offend people, whenever I feel like it. But, in terms of the book, I didn't want the book to be offensive to someone, and if there was a way to just get around that, I thought, why fight it? But it did strike me as, incredible.
How do we keep up? How do we keep up with these things? It's
I'll tell you, Katie Ramos turned out to be a real gem. She was just great. And if you got a question, I'll give you her address. She can answer it. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I have one more question.
Okay, Bernadette.
Yeah.
Bernadette has one more. Okay.
The cover is interesting.
Oh, the cover.
How did
I'm glad you asked that question.
How did they come up with this?
How did they come up with the cover? They didn't come up. What happened was, when I got the publisher and we signed the contract, I said, do you mind if I find the artist for the cover? And he said, no, I'd be delighted, go ahead. And when I did my memoir, Desperate to be a Housewife, I found a woman through somebody whose work I really loved. I loved the look of it, and she designed what I think is a beautiful cover for my memoir, Desperate to be a Housewife. Her name is Michelle Schwartzbauer. She lives in Minnesota. We did the whole thing online, you know. So I got in touch with her immediately and said, Michelle, I've written another book, and my publisher, you know, how about it? Well, she says, sure. So I told her about the book, and you know, I sent it over to her and whatnot, and I waited, and quite a bit of time went by, and finally she sent some sketches, and the sketches were like, oh my God, not what I was looking for. So the first one, I mean, I could get these out and show you if we had more time, but that would kind of be embarrassing. She had a couple in bed who, you know, were covered up and looked like two teens who weren't interested in each other. And I just thought, this is not the way we want to go. And I wrote to her, and I had actually written, there's a scene in the book where they talk about the cover, you know, of Tom's new book. There is a scene in the publisher's office where they're talking about it. And I described 3 covers, and the one I described, I said, no, what I want is you to do this cover that I described. So then they did that cover, which had something like a woman holding out an apple to a guy, you know, and sort of Adam Eve to it. And Michelle was working with a partner, and the partner actually took a 16th century Dutch painting and transposed it. And it didn't look anything like the way Tom and Sherry are described in the book. Like the guy was this sort of Dutch He-Man, sort of big, you know, strong guy. Did not look like a writer, a cosmopolitan writer from New York City. And equally, the Sherry woman looked like nothing like she's described in the book. So at that point I said, well, you know, have you guys actually read the book? Oh no, we don't have time for that.
There you go.
So, you know, after about 3 tries, I said to my publisher, I think we've got to cut our losses here. He said, just tell them it's not a problem. So, okay. He said, well, why don't we have our person, our in-house art director, have a go at it? Well, we had a long discussion as well. And then she ends up sending me 7 covers, 7 ideas. One was worse than the next. They were infinitely worse than the thing with Michelle. I mean, it looked like the kind of dime store novel, like a Western theme, like, you know, cowboy type letters and that sort of thing you'd find in a Greyhound bus station 30 years ago or 50. And right around then, I was talking to this friend of mine in Paris, who didn't come today, but he's here. His name is James Eric Jones. And he and I worked together for 2 years at the Moscow Times. He was the art director. And then he came to the IHT and worked as art director there on a couple of projects for a while. And we were talking, and you know, I know he's working as a freelance designer, and I know he does magazines. But he mentioned something about a book he was doing. And I said, wait a second, you design books? Oh yes. I said, well, Eric, what do you think? Would you possibly? And he said, okay. So he said, well, what do you want? And I said, well, I had this idea, but I'm not sure it works. And just, you know, here's the concept of the book and whatnot. And about 2 days later, he comes up with this thing, which was, you know, I just thought it was brilliant. You know, it conveys the feeling.
Miss it. It's on the shelf. You don't miss this book, okay?
You know, it's got the American. He calls this a deconstructed American flag.
There you go.
And it's got the hand and the heart. You know, so you don't have to have pictures of the characters, which was just like really complicated. And look, you did a beautiful job on the back and even the spine. Nice. So I'm just totally indebted to this. So that's how I got the cover. Well, we argued about practically every point. I can't tell you how many times the words a novel moved from stripe to stripe and whatnot. But, you know, we're used to arguing together. All right, well, maybe we should free Adrian and, you know.
No, hold on. Money's already being thrown at her. Meg, thank you very much, dear. It was fabulous. Thank you, everyone.